Friends, I know this has been a very hard week for lots of you watching tonight. And that initial rush of crisis adrenaline has worn off by now and likely given way to, I think, and I've seen it about the place, a little bit of frustration, a little tiredness, maybe a certain amount of impatience. Perhaps the kids are getting under each other's feet, or you're tired of being cocooned, or you're upset by the grim economic forecast that has you worried. But let me tell you that, well, I had 4 conversations yesterday afternoon, private phone calls, which have banished any niggles or any negativity or any fear that was creeping into my head. 4 phone calls that have strengthened my personal resolve to get through this as best as I can. 4 families who are struggling, not with mere frustration or boredom or impatience, but with raw, unquenchable grief, because 4 of their loved ones fell victim to coronavirus and lost that fight. And those 4 people, those victims, were treasured Late Show viewers who should be tuned in tonight, should be watching, but who are now no longer with us. And that is the cold, cruel, hard reality of coronavirus. And while we're hit daily with the barrage of numbers and statistics, we must not ever forget that behind each number is a real person who lived their best life right until the end. And they made their mark on this world, and they mattered. And so with each of the families' permission, of the 4 families I spoke with yesterday, let me now say farewell to Jo McMahon from Sutton. There she is. Look at that smile. Jo died this month from COVID-19. She was 86 years old. She had been a paediatric nurse, frontline hero in her own day, and had worked all over Europe before she got married. Well-travelled, happy life. Her daughter Orla told me how Jo was famed for her hanging baskets, that she loved television, she loved the soaps. I'm glad to say she liked the Late Late, but she never forgave RTÉ for doing something very silly, because they axed Live at 3, and she was furious about that. Favourite biscuit? Rich tea with butter. And the grandchildren would call over and watch her squish the rich tea and watch the butter come out of the little holes. Beautiful. 9 beautiful grandchildren. They found this hilarious. And because of the restrictions, Jo McMahon couldn't have a funeral as such, the ones that we used to go to. But Seamus Heaney's poetry was read out in her honour. Jo McMahon, a yes J go raibh anam. Let me introduce you to John O'Connor from Cavan. There he is. He's from Cavan Town, and he died this month from COVID-19. He was 93 years old. A stone sculptor. He loved his work, but I think, judging from chats yesterday, he was a singer, a born entertainer, and he probably preferred that. His son Terry told me that John held the accolade of being the first ever Cavan Man of the Year. He was 50 years off the jar. He worked hard to set up AA branches in towns and villages around Ireland. When he died, there was a massive turnout on the streets in Cavan. And the cathedral choir there socially distanced and sang outside the church to say goodbye. And John's family watched online from all over the world. They were proud of their granddad, and he was proud of his grandchildren. They watched from San Francisco, and they watched from Vancouver, and they watched from Australia, and they watched from Japan, and they watched from Malaysia, and they said goodbye to John O'Connor. A yes J go raibh anam. Would you please meet Anne Woods from Donnie Kearney in Dublin? She died this month from COVID-19. She was only 75 years old and never missed the Late Late Show, I was told. A bingo caller. It's an important job. In Donnie Kearney, Old Folks Centre, she was known far and wide for her incredible knitting. And her friends and neighbours were never short of a woolly jumper. In fact, Shay, her only child, her son, told me on the phone that he had to wear Anne's jumpers. And he had to wear them whether he liked them or not, for his whole life. She took her tea, like all the best people take their tea, with the tiniest drop of milk, and she always had the biscuit or the bit of cake to go with it. And when she was being buried, the neighbours all stood outside their houses and they clapped. And Shay said it was nicer than a normal funeral. Her grandchildren, Abby and Noah, were the centre of her world. Anne Woods, a yes J go raibh anam. Katherine Hickey from Kilkenny died this month from COVID-19. She was way too young, at just 51. For the past 5 years, Katherine worked as part of the household staff in St. Luke's Hospital. Look at her. She was fun, she was happy, and she was proud to work on the front line. Her daughter Michaela, just 21 years old, a beautiful person, told me that Katherine loved her holidays in the sun, but also loved dancing in her kitchen to ABBA. Dancing Queen, to be specific. And tragically, Katherine was due to become a grandmother for the first time this autumn. She was over the moon, and she was always telling her family how much she loved them. The house was full of hugs and love. And they didn't have permission to hug her before she died, but they told her over FaceTime just how much they loved her before she died. And there was a guard of honour at St. Luke's Hospital after she died. Hundreds of people lined the street, clapping. Michaela said that that meant more to the family than anyone will ever know. Katherine Hickey, yesterday go raibh anam. So much more than numbers and statistics and figures, representing so many people who've passed away. And we just wanted to give you a sense of the people behind those numbers. And that's how real this is, friends. And they're just 4 of the more than now 1,000 fatalities from COVID-19 coronavirus on this tiny little island. So let's keep the show going while remembering the good people.